My name is Anitra Page. I teach fourth grade math and science and serve on the school's leadership team. I created this presentation, Data Overview, Digging into the Data at North Douglas Elementary for the leadership team at NDES as we prepare to plan for the 2016-2017 school year. The purpose of this presentation is to provide the leadership team with information in order to make data-driven decisions to improve student learning, identify students' academic strengths and weaknesses, and increase student achievement and close achievement gaps. Today we will discuss the demographic changes the school has experienced over the years, CRCT data over a 3-year time frame, and the first year data results for GMAS. At the end, we will have an opportunity to discuss the data to determine our next steps. First, let's look at the demographic changes we have had over the years. Over the past 4 years, NDES has seen a 10% increase in student enrollment. First school year, 2012-2013, we had 658 students. For school year 2015-2016, our total student enrollment was 718 students. As shown on this graph, the number of students for each of the race ethnicity groups has stayed consistent over the past 4 years. Over the last 4 years, the district has averaged 14% Hispanic students, 51% Black students, and 30% white students. North Douglas averaged 18% Hispanic students, 74% Black students, and 8% white students. As you can see from the graph, in comparison to the district, the school averaged 14% more Hispanic students and 23% more Black students. In contrast, the school averaged 22% less white students than the district. Even though there was a slight increase for school year 2014-2015, North Douglas has averaged 85% of its students receiving free or reduced lunch. The school averages 23% higher than the district, which averages 62% of the total student population. Since the opening of NDES, it has met the requirements to be considered a Title I school. Being identified as a Title I school entitles NDES to receive additional federal funding. Based on the academic needs of our students, we provide services in order to meet those needs, whether it be met through ESOL for English to speakers of other languages, an IEP for students with disabilities, EIP for early intervention program, and PC for gifted students. The number of students receiving ESOL and gifted services stayed pretty consistent over the 3 school years. Students with disability increased from 65 students for school year 2012-2013 to 101 students for the school year 2014-2015. That's an increase of 55%. EIP students increased from 137 students for school year 2012-2013 to 187 students for school year 2014-2015. That's an increase of 37%. We must ensure that we are using appropriate academic, language, and behavior interventions in order to meet the academic needs of all of our students. Based on the data presented in this graph, it shows that we need to determine what obstacles are contributing to the percentage of students missing 6 or more days in a school year. For school year 2014-2015, we had 45% of our students missing instructional time for 6 or more days. In order to meet the academic needs of all students, we must have students attend school on a regular basis. Now, let's look at our CRCT results for the last 3 years. It was administered in Georgia. For testing years 2012-2014, 3rd through 5th grade students showed growth in the percentage of students at and above proficient on CRCT in all areas. Even though the largest percentage of growth was in the area of math, there is still a 12% achievement gap between students at and above proficient when compared to students' performance in reading. We have implemented some instructional initiatives for both math and reading over the past few years. We must consider what impact each math initiative is or is not having on student performance and determine if we need to make any additions or deletions to close the achievement gap. By disaggregating the data by race, ethnicity, we are better able to reflect on the performance of specific groups and identify achievement gaps and growth. From this data, we can see that we were able to close the achievement gap among Hispanic students and white students for mathematics on CRCT from 2012 to 2014. It also reveals that Hispanic, Black, and white students showed growth in the second year and then decrease in the third year. Black students underperformed Hispanic and white students for the test years 2013 and 2014. We will need to consider options for closing the achievement gap among Black students. When looking at the disaggregated data for 3rd through 5th grade students for reading on CRCT based on race ethnicity, we can see that Hispanic and Black students have definitely shown growth in performance over the past 3 years. Based on the data for test year 2014, the school closed the achievement gap among all race ethnicity groups for reading on CRCT. When looking at disaggregated data for students at and above proficient for math on CRCT based on gender, females seem to outperform male students throughout the 3 test years, even though the number of male students are greater than the number of female students. We will need to investigate further to determine the cause for the achievement gap between males and females in math. When looking at the disaggregated data for students at and above proficient for reading on CRCT based on gender, it appears that we were able to close the achievement gap among males and females over the 3 testing years. By the 3rd year, males outperformed female students slightly. When looking at the disaggregated data for students at and above proficient for math on CRCT based on English proficiency, we were able to close the achievement gap between limited English proficient students and not English proficient students. From this data, we can see that there was an increase in growth for both groups in the 2nd year and then a decrease the 3rd year. When looking at disaggregated data for students at and above proficient for reading on CRCT based on English proficiency, we were able to close the achievement gap during the 2nd testing year. In the 3rd year, limited English proficient students slightly outperformed not English limited proficient students in reading on the CRCT. The Georgia Milestones Assessment System, first administered to students in test year 2015. Georgia Milestones, GMAS, is designed to provide students with critical information about their own achievement and their readiness for next level of learning. Lastly, let's look at our GMAS results for the first year of administration. Based on the data for the first administration of GMAS, let's consider the percentage of students at or above proficient on GMAS in the 4 tested subject areas. North Douglas results are English Language Arts 19.6%, Mathematics 25.4%, Science 18.2%, and Social Studies 13.1%. North Douglas underperformed the district and the state in all subject areas. The test and score system is different than the CRCT, so we will look at each subject area a little closer. The English Language Arts component of the test included varying depth of knowledge multiple choice questions based on reading and ELA standards. But different from the CRCT, it also had an extended writing component that combined to create a single test score. For the first year of administration, North Douglas had 65 students ranked as proficient or distinguished learners, 131 students ranked as developing learners, and 142 students ranked as beginning learners. The mathematics section of the GMAS includes varying depth of knowledge multiple choice questions and constructed response problems. For the first year of administration, North Douglas had 89 students ranked as proficient or distinguished learners, 157 students ranked as developing learners, and 96 students ranked as beginning learners. The science component of the GMAS had varying depth of knowledge multiple choice questions. For the first year of administration, North Douglas had 61 students ranked as proficient or distinguished learners, 150 students ranked as developing learners, and 130 students ranked as beginning learners. The social studies component of the GMAS comprised of varying depth of knowledge questions. For the first year of administration, North Douglas had 44 students ranked as proficient or distinguished learners, 165 students ranked as developing learners, and 128 students ranked as beginning learners. When looking at the disaggregated data for each performance level in math on GMAS based on gender, there is an achievement gap among males and females that are ranked as proficient or distinguished learners. As the data reflects, 74 of the male students ranked as proficient or distinguished learners, whereas 95 female students ranked as proficient or distinguished learners. When looking at the disaggregated data for each performance level in math on GMAS based on race, ethnicity, there is an achievement gap among Hispanic, Black, and white students. Based on the data, 11 Hispanic students ranked as proficient or distinguished learners, 67 Black students ranked as proficient or distinguished learners, and 6 white students ranked as proficient or distinguished learners. When looking at the disaggregated data for each performance level in English language arts on GMAS based on gender, there is an apparent achievement gap between male and female students that rank as proficient or distinguished. As the data reflects, 21 male students ranked as proficient or distinguished learners, whereas 45 female students ranked as proficient or distinguished learners. When looking at the disaggregated data for each performance letter in English language arts on GMAS based on race, ethnicity, there does not appear to be an achievement gap among the race ethnicity groups, but all groups will need to show academic growth in ELA. Based on the data, 11 Hispanic students ranked as proficient or distinguished learners, 99 Black students ranked as proficient or distinguished learners, and 4 white students ranked as proficient or distinguished learners. As a leadership group, we need to determine if an incentive program will help reduce the number of absences of our students. Determine instructional strategies and initiatives that may help close the achievement gaps among Blacks and males in mathematics. And identify which reading and ELA instructional strategies and initiatives are having the greatest impact on academic performances. We must ask ourselves, what additions and deletions can be made in order for us to help our students perform academically? Now, we will take a moment to discuss our next steps as a leadership team. Once we finish, I ask that you take this information back to discuss within your teams. We will reconvene at a later date so that we may continue to determine instructional strategies and initiatives in order to help our students excel academically.